Hello, I'm Aimee Nielson with Seed World Group, and I'm here today with Charles Miller. He is the Director of Strategic Alliances and Business Development for Solynta. Welcome to the table, Charles.
Nice to be here with you, Aimee. It's really good to be here in California at the Asta Veg and Flower Show.
Yes, so glad that we could meet up today. So for those unfamiliar with Solynta, could you tell me a little bit about the company so that everyone is on the same page?
Yeah, sure. So Solynta is a hybrid potato breeding company. And of course, we're a seed company. Unlike other potato companies, we actually sell our products via true seeds. And that's what makes us really unique. That combined with hybrid breeding. So we're the very first company in the world to actually develop hybrids in potatoes. And obviously there are a lot of advantages with that, just like there are with other crops.
Would you like to go into any detail about your company's mission or goals?
Yeah, sure. Look, our mission, I think, is really to provide the highest quality starting material for the best results to growers around the world.
Good. Okay, so Solynta was founded 16 years ago, is that right?
That's right.
But you're just now getting into the market, so can you tell me about that process?
Absolutely. That does sound a bit strange, I know that. But in agriculture, nothing really happens fast. And certainly when you're developing new technology, it doesn't happen fast either. But you know, it's not about how quickly you run, it's how far you go. And what we've been able to do over that 16 years is convert completely how you breed potatoes away from kind of selection, clonal propagation, and breeding as well, but much more focused on hybrid breeding, which allows us to really pinpoint the traits that the farmers and the growers and the processors need, and then be able to get products with those traits to the growers more quickly. And just like with maize and sunflowers and tomatoes, this takes time.
So Solynta was the first company to actually breed hybrid potatoes. So talk about the significance of that.
Yeah, it had never been done before, Solynta. And, you know, it took a long time, as you just said in your previous question. You know, of that 16 years, probably 10 to 12 of those years really was hardcore research. You know, how do we create hybrids? How do we isolate female and male germplasm so that then you have really elite parent lines with the genes you want in them? And really it's the same process as sunflowers and maize, just like all the other hybrid crops, but we had to create that just like the hybrid creators in those crops did.
Interesting, very interesting. So what are some of the advantages of hybrid true potato seed?
Well, maybe just to shed a little light on what the traditional process looks like. You know, it takes anywhere from 10 to 20 years to really isolate something in potatoes, in traditional potatoes. And that process is so slow, it can't adapt to the changes we see in our environment today, in the pests that we see around the world. And with hybrids, if you have the right genetic background, you can very quickly create something that's beneficial for the growers. Maybe a good example would be blight resistance. You know, blight is what created the Irish potato famine. Millions of people died, many more millions of people were displaced, not to mention all the people that went hungry. And that disease still exists. It actually reduces the global potato crop annually by more than 30%. And we've been able to identify numerous genes that bring resistance to that. And within an 18-month time period, we were able to take what I would just call a standard potato, a nice standard yellow potato, and we were able to insert, without GMOs, through hybrid breeding, multiple genes of resistance to blight. And we've been able now to launch those commercially around the world. And that has a true impact. You know, yes, they're resistant, so that's nice. The chemicals that need to be used on the crop now don't need to be used, or can be used in a significantly less amount. And that means it's better for the environment, it's more sustainable, and it's exactly what the population needs to create food security.
How many varieties are we talking about that you've created?
So in that kind of 16-year time period, I couldn't tell you, but it's been thousands. Now, certainly we're not commercializing thousands. We have a reasonably deep portfolio of varieties that, are designed specifically for geographic regions, for climatic regions, and for diseases. But we try to make what we call is a robust potato. And that means that it's more multi-purpose, that it can be in various zones.
Now, will consumers notice any kind of difference in taste or texture when they consume these?
Well, at the moment, no. What we have is a potato. And so just like all potatoes, you have a floury potato, you have a baking potato, you have a frying potato, and it tastes like a potato. Now, I'd like to think that one of our varieties is particularly tasty because I really like it, but I also know that other consumers have other taste. It is a potato, so you as a consumer need to pick the one that you like best.
So when we're talking about hybrid potatoes, how has that changed the game in terms of poverty reduction, sustainability, nutritional insecurity, and basically the global food supply, right?
Yeah, no, I think, look, that's a really good question. And, the why we do this and why Solynta started on this journey is really important. But the change that we believe is most important for everything we do is that now there is a much more available supply of high quality, clean, disease-free starting material than in the past. Well, why is that? Well, in the past, and even today, potatoes are grown by clonal propagation. You save the tubers. Well, those tubers were in the soil. If the soil happens to have had some soil-borne diseases, they travel to the next generation or the next farm. We produce true seeds in glasshouses, the same way they produce most hybrid tomato seeds. And those are clean, they're disease-free, and they're storable for multiple years. I mean, our seed can be stored 5+ years in the right conditions with no impact on quality. And that's totally game-changing. But then you think about, okay, you've got true seeds. Well, there's also, think of what it takes to ship an entire acre's or hectares worth of seed tubers from the farmer that grows the seed tubers, let's say in Washington State, here in the U.S., to Idaho, for example. Now, if that happens for every acre that the farmer in Idaho is going to plant, he needs more or less 1 to 1.5 tons of seed tubers. That would fill up our booth here. And they have to be shipped on a truck. And most farmers don't have 1 acre. They have 100 acres. They have 200 acres. So that's multiple truckloads of tubers that have to be also stored in very large warehouses at a cool climate, where our seed arrives in something the size of a tuna can. It can be stored in your office at a stable temperature. It can be FedExed from wherever it's produced to the farmer. And that is completely game-changing.
Really reducing the inputs.
That's right. Across the board.
Across the world, really, right?
Exactly.
So speaking of across the world, so one of your largest areas of growth, you told me, has been in Eastern and Southern Africa. Those are regions that have historically depended on maize and rice for nutrition for their population. So how will this benefit those people in those regions?
Yeah, that part of the world for us is really a focal point. And why is it a focal point? And it's because most of those governments actually see potatoes as a staple crop now. Potatoes use less water to produce the same number of nutrients as maize and other things. It is a faster crop actually than maize. It can be planted year-round multiple times. You can do the same with maize, but again, the crop length is longer to maturity. So you can actually plant and deliver food much faster that's higher quality nutritionally and also uses less water. Now, our goal would be then to also make sure that the inputs that are used are less by the farmers, and that we can also work across the value chain, not just with farmers, but with the seed dealers, with the governments, with the processors, and with the consumers, so that all together we can create a sustainable value chain. And in many parts of the world, even developed parts of the world, that value chain is highly segmented. And by being able to work together and linking that chain, that actually spreads the value across, and it allows for the whole chain to be more productive. And so we think not just about our small segment, but we try to think holistically, and we think that really gives us an advantage.
That's great. So what are some of the challenges that you have encountered when you're trying to scale your business with all this rapid growth?
Yeah, certainly the challenges that we face are about what I like to call the enabling environment, because what we're doing is new. You know, when I just a few weeks ago, I asked for a import permit to Botswana. Okay, strange country, but they use a lot of potatoes in Botswana. And I was working specifically with a distributor there, and they sent me a import permit for 100 tons of seed. Now, you know, I told you our seed comes in tuna cans. We would never produce 100 tons of seed, but if you were producing seed tubers, you would. And that just showed that the government there hasn't quite got their mind wrapped around this change. And so working from the very beginning of the chain all the way through the end is key. And so we have to get the enabling environment right. So I actually spend a lot of time working with regulators around the world just to make sure they understand and we understand them. And we're speaking on the same language so that they can see the benefits and we can demonstrate the benefits. And by doing that, we actually can really get the products to the growers in a much better way.
So what has this process taught you? What have you learned?
I've really learned that you can't do things in isolation. You know, we talked about Africa. There's a saying in Africa, if you want to go someplace quickly, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And we've kind of taken that on in our business development commercial team as one of our mantras. We want to do things together. And that means bringing this value chain and all the stakeholders together and understanding the benefits and the challenges. And maybe we can help with some of those challenges as well. And then we can really go a long way in reducing chemicals, increasing sustainability, and increasing food security.
So you've had a lot of new customers for a variety of reasons. And what are you finding brings them to you?
I think what really attracts the new customers is the availability of starting material. You know, I mentioned that earlier, but one of the most difficult things for potato growers globally is to have that starting material ready when the season is upon them. It's much easier here in the U.S. The system's quite well orchestrated, the same in Europe. But the further you get away from the traditional seed tuber production areas, the more complicated that value chain becomes. And this way, seed's available 24/7, and the farmers can plan based on the weather, based on their climate needs.
Well, that brings up another interesting question. A lot of the areas that you're impacting deal with incredible weather extremes. So how does Solynta help farmers adapt?
So I think that's, you know, again, this availability concept is very helpful for that. But at the same time, we talked about robust varieties. That's also helpful because we know that the world is changing. Don't know exactly where, if it's going to be too much rain or it's going to be not enough rain. Depends on who you talk to, right? You know, if I talk to someone in northern Texas, it's not enough rain. But if I talk to somebody in central Texas, it's too much rain at the moment. The seasons are completely changed. And what we offer is being able to plant when the climate is right because the seed is readily available. And also, governments are realizing that they need to focus on crops that use their resources well. So if water is, generally speaking, a limiting resource in their country, Kenya, for example, at the moment, for the last several years, has been quite dry. The government realizes, well, we have to be very cognizant of this water. And that means farmers, please grow crops that are nutritious and conserve water. And so then you shift away from crops like rice, in some cases, and move towards crop like potato.
So Charles, what's next? What are you looking forward to?
I'm really looking forward to continuing to be able to work with these enabling environments and really showing the value that this technology has. Because every time I go to one of our customers and I see one of their growers that's for the first time been able to produce potatoes successfully, it really gets me excited. And that's what I like about this industry, and that's in particular what I like about this company and my role in this company.
Thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me today. I really appreciate you being able to take time away from the conference to have this conversation with us. And we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Amy. It's the first time we've met face to face. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you have a good conference.
Thank you so much.